Hey guys, welcome to Living Up in Lion City, a podcast about life in the sunny island of Singapore, where friends and I talk about stuff that goes on in this little red dot we call home. This episode, we're going to talk about what makes a city boring. A few months ago, I asked friends to fill up a poll what they considered were boring cities and why. I invited three of them, from Singapore, from Spain, and from Belgium, to weigh in on their experiences living in different cities and trying to figure out what people really mean when they say that a city is boring. Enjoy! So, do you guys remember that poll that I've shared on Facebook about what is considered to be a boring city or not? And I know that some of you filled it up. I found a couple of interesting things, right? If you haven't checked it out,
No, I haven't actually.
no, it's fine. I can just read it out to you, and that's
I
okay.
Checked it the other day a little bit, and it was actually the first time. I thought it was a different list, but yeah, that surprised me in a
Okay.
way because of the answers that appear on
Yeah.
it.
Which cities are in the list?
So for context, there were about 15 results, and some of the cities that were considered boring include Johor Bahru,
Mhm.
Los Angeles,
Okay.
Perth, Australia, Vientiane in Laos, Kuching, Malaysia, Paris,
Okay.
Kuala Lumpur, Luxembourg, Dubai, Malacca, Hualien in Taiwan,
Mhm.
and Jakarta.
Mm.
So these are the cities that have been considered boring by a bunch of people who actually filled that survey. And Kuala Lumpur features twice.
Yes, and another one.
Vientiane in Laos,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Never been to Vientiane.
and I'm just curious. So it's like about Vientiane, what they say is Vientiane is a typical dusty developing city. The only noteworthy attraction is the temple, which comes in abundance in other parts of Southeast Asia. About Kuala Lumpur, one of the comments is nothing much to do in the city except food and drinks.
Wow.
That's pretty much it. And then the answer for why Johor Bahru is boring is because it's too similar to Singapore. that's yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
go on.
But it sounds like it's more like for traveling. Like,
Yeah.
is it boring for traveling?
Yeah.
Because what I answered is more about living. Like,
Right.
From my experience in living in Luxembourg.
In a city.
So she's the one who said that Luxembourg is a boring city.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a good point. The problem here, for example, is that you probably are quite of traveling people. We have been living abroad and different places. So what we consider boring necessarily doesn't need to be to make a city boring. Maybe it can be a city boring for traveling, and can be a city boring for partying. It can be a city boring for establishments and things that maybe you prefer to do in a relaxing day. It can be boring
Okay.
for the kids. It can be boring for other type of
there's a lot of
moments.
genres to what boring.
There's a lot of This is it can be very very open. For example, maybe a city like I don't know, Perth. That maybe it's they say that is boring because of there are sights to see, but feel like literally now life after 6 p.m. So probably somebody that just likes to experience the city in a different way.
Nightlife, yeah.
Right. But if it's somebody that wants to go there and do sightseeing, well, yeah, maybe it's.
You're right. I mean, of course, boring comes in different flavors. But the thing is that what we generally see on the internet and discussions about cities online is that oftentimes there are some specific definitions of what boring is.
Okay.
But before we get to that, I just want to understand, like, what do you guys consider boring? What is boring for you?
Okay. For me, I think Oslo was boring as
Okay.
a city to travel. There was like nothing much. It's mostly like quite a lot of development. It's quite modern.
Okay.
You wouldn't expect like the what you think of. Oh, it's like nature, Norway,
Okay.
and
okay.
then to things to do or see, there wasn't really much for me. Yeah.
Shan, is it a case of managing expectations?
No, but like for me, probably like I don't ski, so there's like
Okay.
a ski center not far.
Right.
But city center wise, there wasn't a lot to do,
Okay.
and like for travelers, it's quite expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a common gripe for when it comes to cities which don't have too much to do. The idea is that, at least, and this is my personal opinion, I feel that cities generally there's always something to do. It depends on whether you can afford it.
Yeah.
And that plays
yeah,
a big part.
definitely.
Or who do you know in the place?
Yeah,
as
for
well.
sure.
If you,
So-
for example, are alone and just arrive there and don't talk with anyone, maybe you just you are only relying on sightseeing, monuments, typical things that you have seen on the internet that you have to do in the place,
Right.
like we travel, instead of hanging out with the locals. I don't know, if, for example, if you live maybe 3 months, you will enjoy life more
Right.
in these places. Now we could open another podcast about what makes people from a place boring.
Wow.
Oh, that's a can of worms.
Yeah, I'm not going to
That's a can of worms, I know.
Cool, you know.
Maybe,
Well,
All the pitchforks are out. I tell you.
people is going to kill each other.
Yeah, So I'm curious,
yeah.
right, about lived experiences, because Celine, you talked about it's a different story when you live in that in a city or a place. Tell us about your experience in Luxembourg and why you hate it so much.
Wow.
Hated is a big word.
I don't know
I
how
had-
many Luxembourg audience you have
I've lived-
here.
I
I'm going to share with
Maybe-
people I know who live there.
Maybe you can give like a basic introduction what Luxembourg is like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've lived there 2 years. But honestly, I had a lot of fun there because I had very cool friends to hang out with.
Right.
But I would, and that's why I think what makes a city boring is really the people mostly. And Luxembourg, unfortunately, has a lot of boring people, in my opinion.
Okay.
So basically, Luxembourg is like that. You have 50% of people from Luxembourg, Luxembourgish people, and they are mainly staying within themselves. They
Right.
talk Luxembourgish, that exists, and they're not really friendly to foreigners. So they will
I
not
see.
mingle at all. So basically, I know one Luxembourgish plus my boss.
Okay.
That's from 2 years living in Luxembourg.
Wow.
Wow.
And then the other half of the people is foreigners, and they are among them. It's mostly 80. I think I saw 85% are from Europe.
Okay.
So it's mostly French, Belgian, Portugal, Italian,
How
and
Right.
German.
What's the population of Luxembourg?
It's 600,000.
600,000.
Yeah,
It's like
it's also very
like
small.
a small city
Yeah.
in China.
That's for the whole country.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's for
Okay.
the whole
The
country.
city is the country, is it?
It's not like
No,
Singapore.
but
There
it's
are
the
other
same name.
cities, but yeah,
Yeah, it's the same name.
It is a big city in Europe. Yes. And you. Yeah.
it's
Mm,
also not
not-
big.
not
Also,
that
it's quite
big.
small actually.
Okay.
You can actually for a traveler, you can visit Luxembourg in half a day.
Wow.
Okay.
I think you can
Okay.
see everything. It's
600
beautiful.
Right.
I want to say it's not interesting, but really it's small. So you
But
Okay.
culturally, it's
Very-
just similar to where you come from, right? I mean, I'm just looking
Is-
it up.
and yeah, for me it's nothing that interesting also because it's very similar to Belgium in terms
Yeah,
of
Is it the same
landscape.
language? Because you just mentioned that they speak.
They speak
another-
a lot. They speak French also, but they
Right.
also have their own language. They
Okay.
can speak both, but then they will not make that effort to speak. I was once in a meeting
mm.
where I had to take notes. So I was supposed to understand the conversation, right?
Right.
And there were only Luxembourgish people in that meeting,
Yeah.
and they
no.
didn't talk French. And they can all speak French very well, but then they all talk in Luxembourg
Mhm.
in Luxembourgish for 1 hour.
Yeah.
I was
Um,
like,
That's actually quite common. I had some international meetings in Spain,
Okay.
and yeah, in the end, everyone ends speaking Spanish
Okay.
because of people, I don't know, I
Right.
think that we are lazy or whatever.
But
Just
so
want to communicate faster.
there's a couple of things over there, right? So, for example, especially in countries where multiple languages are spoken, sometimes in situations of, when it's a high stress meeting, for example, people switch to languages they're comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
But I'm guessing from Celine's example, the people in those meetings weren't willing to put in the effort to include you in the conversation.
Yeah.
Did you
Well,
feel it?
It's
Yeah.
not just, I was very young. I wasn't
Okay.
really going to bring anything in the conversation. I was really there to
Right.
take notes.
Okay.
That's when it makes absolutely no sense if they know that I
Right.
can't speak Luxembourgish. If I'm there for
Wow.
taking notes that they don't speak French. Yeah. But they're, for me, whenever I encountered Luxembourgish people, I've never found them very friendly. It's unfortunately, from my experience, it's been like that.
Right.
And in the foreigners, they are similar. First of all, like they are from Europe,
Okay.
and then they are very similar in they all are in the same industries. They all are either lawyers, bankers, or financial auditors.
I see.
And these are not the most fun industries either.
Wow.
And yes, they're all there for the money, honestly, and they're not really like purpose-driven people. They're
I
very
see.
financially.
That's such an interesting word that she used, purpose driven. Like, does that indicate whether
A person is interested.
Yeah.
I think
it?
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see that in Singapore quite a lot as well because of all the, there's a lot of quantity of people that works in finance,
Right.
banking.
Similar sectors, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, for example,
But there are also people from other sectors.
there are people from other places, yeah. But
I
you
don't
can see
find it
like
as much
that how the conversation switches. So what are you doing
that's
here?
the thing, though. What is purpose driven?
What are you doing here? Like,
Wait, aren't there
Like that.
purpose driven bankers? Like, are bankers just boring people as a species?
I suppose that there is people everywhere, but yeah, this conversation happens all the time.
I figured that lawyers' conversations with bankers would be interesting because they can be like the polar opposite, right?
Lawyers' conversation with bankers, it probably is very like a choreography.
Like a lawyer could be on his way to trying to make someone bankrupt, and then
yes,
on
like
the other side.
like a choreography.
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
just like
basically.
okay, what can I say? What can I say?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
So, can we make a connection between the boringness of a city and whether it's a financial hub?
Huh.
Could there be something like that?
Oh, that's a touchy subject.
Well, I mean, because
I
would
I
be,
think we
I
can
would
all agree
say-
that bankers suck, right?
I
No,
would-
bankers,
I would say not really. Depends on what you are searching for. For
Okay.
example, I mean, bankers, for example, and people that work in finance. Yeah,
And there are
Very
people
stress.
who like stability. They like financial stability. They want to they're not very adventurous
Right.
mindset or. This is of course a
the
shortcut.
ones that
I'm
are
sorry to come
for
with
financial
stereotypes, but
stability.
we have to here.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. It's a
But
safe
that's-
space.
But the people that are in finance don't they already have they want more action or whatever. My God, they just got destroy
Well,
their night.
because I feel like, I agree with a lot of what you're saying because, I kind of felt this connection too, between banking and whether it's a boring city or not. Some examples, Singapore comes up often in these conversations, it's like financial hub. So there's also conversations about Singapore being boring, et cetera, et cetera.
But Hong Kong's like the same, isn't it?
And
Right, in many ways.
an example that is used a lot in the European context is Frankfurt. So
yeah.
when I've
Yeah,
asked
I've heard
people
that.
about, cities being boring and all that, a lot of people have used Frankfurt as an example,
Oh.
saying that
Oh,
it's just a place where you go to do your job.
okay.
It's
You
the
know-
same with Luxembourg.
Okay,
Actually,
right.
a lot of people don't live in Luxembourg. That's another problem. Like
Okay.
foreigners don't live in half of the foreigners working in Luxembourg. They live in their own country and they commute.
Right.
And they do like
Is
1
it that
hour
close?
or 2 hours. No, there's a lot of traffic jam. There's like
Oh,
some
shit.
people they come to go to work. They take like 1 or 2 hours of traffic jam.
Maybe some of them, they fly to go to work.
No, that's for example, if you work in Jakarta and you work in the city center, you probably can do 1 hour, 1 hour and a half
Yeah.
to commute
that's
every day.
true.
My friends were doing that. They had the office in the very, very center of Jakarta. and they were just their like time for work was up to 6 p.m. and they were just there until 8 because in their own words, it's funnier to wait.
Traffic jam,
It's
right?
funnier to wait here than to wait in the car for the traffic jam.
Okay. Okay.
That can make a city boring. Long times of waiting, and yes, that's maybe more than boring is annoying.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
get
and
bored of
because
being
there's not
annoyed.
many people in the city, then there's not much facilities also for like if you want to go out. I remember how much we've struggled to go out and to come back home because you don't have that much night buses or
Okay,
like there's
right.
no way to come back home. So if you go to party, you can take a taxi and it would cost you like super expensive. So at the
Mm.
time, I was quite like just starting
Right.
my career, not
Yeah.
so I like we were thinking twice to go out.
You have like
Which-
night,
I mean, you
night
could have
buses or
house
something.
parties. That's like
Yeah,
the only
yeah.
other option.
Yeah,
right?
but
Yeah,
then-
except the neighbors won't like
Oh
it.
yeah,
We had so much trouble with the
Of
neighbors. Mm.
So here's the problem, right? Bankers and sucky neighbors. This is this is what makes a city boring, right?
But have you seen Wolf of Wall Street? No,
No,
that's an
no.
interesting banker.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like that is like a glorification of the banking
Yes.
lifestyle,
It's
which is
rom-
possibly
it's
a reason why a lot of
romanticization.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
romanticization, not glorification. It's
Yeah,
romanticization
romanticization, right? And
of the life of a banker on just like being successful. And
I dare say a
wants
lot of
to-
people,
wants to
join
just- yeah.
banking because of that. They're like, oh yes, I want to be Jordan fucking Belfort. I want to sleep on wads of cash and
pollutes.
right?
be
It's
like,
not coke all fucking day. But yeah, that's also there, right? So the thing is, so there's Frankfurt, there's Singapore, there's Luxembourg, as we now realize this. A quick question about Luxembourg, Celine. You mentioned that the locals generally aren't quite friendly with foreigners. Is this something that most of the foreigner friends that you had also feel?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What
you
is
can ask
the
anyone.
right? What is the kind of unfriendliness? Is it a general shyness, or is it disdain and condescension?
I would say shyness. They're just not interested in
Okay.
other
Right.
people. I don't know. I rarely encountered them. Like when I go out, it will be mostly foreigners.
Right.
So first of all, they stay at home, so you
Okay.
don't meet them.
okay.
So it's a bit harder to get close to them.
but I think there's
And
two
then they will
different points
speak
there.
their own language. They won't make that effort also. So
Okay.
there's like a barrier. And why? I don't know why. I haven't talked to them.
Do
to
the
discuss that.
people, the locals themselves think the same way? Like that they, okay, this is like an example, but like Finns and Swedish people, I wouldn't say boring, but like they are very reserved
Yeah.
and they know
Oh,
that they're
man.
reserved
Yeah.
and they let people know that they are known as reserved. You see it as like the bloody bus station.
But what is
They-
reserved?
Like in
what?
Norway or like, they just
Mhm.
keep things to themselves. They don't.
Yeah, and as well avoiding. I remember, for example, being in a bar in Sweden, in Stockholm, and I was alone there. I just ordered a beer. There was this guy beside me, reading the ingredients of the beer. So I suppose, like, okay, maybe he's quite bored because what
Yeah.
can have that.
Yeah.
So, hey man, how's the night? So he just looks at me like somebody just invaded his personal space.
Yeah.
Then stopped looking at me. Just continued reading the.
Oh wow. Jeez.
Okay, I suppose that's not
Fun
interesting
conversation.
enough. That was it. Thank you very much.
Wow.
You got beaten by a beer ingredients list.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was. Yes, exactly. I
Right.
got beaten by a label.
Yeah.
In a beer. A label in a beer was more interesting than me that night.
Oh man. But then is that a common attitude?
I mean,
Right.
I've had the experiences. Like
Okay.
you just wouldn't get people generally just there. They don't want to talk to you long.
Okay.
Like if you need something, they'll help you. But like that's it.
Yeah,
Right.
very
Like,
polite. Actually,
yeah.
very polite.
Yeah, polite, but like it never goes anything more. than
I
that.
kind of
Yeah.
felt every time that I was talking with people there, I kind of felt they were incredibly polite, but you feel when they want you to fuck off.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they make it
They want
known.
this conversation to end at some point.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Is that similar in?
Yeah, I can recognize that
Okay.
kind of behavior, but
Right.
I still don't know exactly why. But
Okay. Because
Yeah.
there's a bunch of things like when you talk about locals keeping to themselves and not interacting with foreigners that much because number one it could be a reserved attitude and all that, and number two could be disdain, especially in classist societies. When there's like a huge difference between, let's say, uh, economic status or certain
Okay.
socioeconomic
What do you mean,
layers.
like disdain?
Disdain as in like
Or even race issues.
racial,
Mm.
yeah, communal,
Or like
religion.
xenophobia.
yeah, a lot of that stuff, right? So it's like, we don't want to talk to you.
Okay.
You're here, that's cool, but let's just have our own space, right? So I'm just curious to know if that's one of those things, right? We know what you described about your life in Luxembourg, for example, does happen in a number of places, and this happens all across the world, especially for foreigners where they live in expat bubbles. In some places, it's because there is a big difference between language and culture, and so everybody sticks to their own for survival. And there's another one where people stick to their own because they're like, well, we're above you guys or we're below you guys, etc.
Yeah, or you are not part of the same group.
Right. Yeah.
This is like tribal behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just curious to know if, like, outside of Luxembourg, were there any cities that you guys lived in where you sensed that kind of thing?
Can I say Singapore?
I was going to say that for myself.
as a local,
In Singapore,
yeah, as a local.
Because I understand there is a rift. There is a certain gap, and it's not hostile. But the thing is that there is a significant feeling of let's keep to our own.
Yeah.
So-
There is not everyone, but
Yeah, for sure.
it
Like,
still exists,
Yeah.
and I think that there should be more conversation than the conversation that exists right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are just keeping our feelings shut.
Yeah. Like, once
In a
again,
way.
I know it's not the case for everyone, and a large majority of people are not like that. But what I've also realized is that there is a significant effort that needs to be put on both sides.
Okay,
Right?
so for example, we are
But-
talking about being a city boring because of the sense of not having enough human connection right now. Maybe this is like, for example, human connection not being there enough.
That's an
In the
interesting
city.
point, though.
But like, what if you took the human element out of a city? Right? Like, would the city still be interesting or boring?
wow,
Right.
That's
Is
like
there an
being,
example?
that's like being in Fallout without.
Yeah, no, but like, for example, I think Rome or like France, like Paris, would be still interesting
With the
because the
of
history
the place.
and
And-
you know
and
you don't see
the-
like those buildings
the
anywhere else in the world. Yeah,
architecture.
for example.
Yeah, but maybe Norway and Sweden could be like that if you go to a very nature space.
Like the fjords, for example,
Yes, exactly.
they don't exist
Or
anywhere
you go
else.
to Iceland, the volcanoes and the
Yeah,
all the lagoons and whatever, yeah.
like on from a visual point, like I can say like at the same time, Norway's like the most amazing country because Northern Lights. You only got it in like
Yeah.
the
So
Northern Hemisphere.
there's these parts. There's different parts. There's like the human part of being boring. There is the scenic environment part. Probably something like services and what you personally need to enjoy. For example, if you can enjoy life in the middle of the Sahara, maybe you like it.
or
very,
like
very scenic,
or like
but
sex, drugs,
yeah,
and rock and roll.
Maybe
like
maybe you don't
Amsterdam
have.
would probably be one.
Maybe something that you need or that you want because of your personality.
But that's something that we're seeing because there's the novelty, right? So to take the example of the Northern Lights that you said, it's like, whoa, Northern Lights is amazing. It just fills my heart with joy and love and peaceful and shit like that. But if you see it every day, if you're late to work and you constantly associate you being late to the Northern Lights, you're gonna fucking hate it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like God fucking damn it, all these
right?
lights again.
So it's like at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
if it's
I don't
something
know
that
if
you
the
see every
scenic
day-
aspect really adds to the boringness or interestingness of a city.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know a lot of people say that yes,
okay,
it's
okay, like
interesting if-
maybe this coming from the sun, this solar winds is kind of like cheating. Maybe architecture is a better example.
Okay,
Like
okay.
Rome, There's no Coliseum. It doesn't exist anywhere. I mean, there's like
Yeah.
similar structures.
It is, but I was living in Rome, and I can tell you, I was passing by there. Yeah, I was still amazed, but at some point, it just stopped being
Just
so
fades
you
away,
get used
amazing.
to it.
It's like
You
it's
get
like
used
me
to
looking
it.
at Marina Bay Sands. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
whatever,
It's-
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. At some point,
Yeah.
it's just not that interesting. It becomes part of the city in which you live, and that was me. That
The-
was
the
living
wow
only,
factor
only for
just
2
goes
years.
away.
So imagine people that is born there and live for 30 years, 40 years, just like,
Yep.
yeah, whatever.
So then, what's makes a city interesting at that point is that there are some events, there are some things like people that you come back to people are like they create new things to make it entertaining. So events or art or whatever.
See, I want to get back to you about that events, right? Like Singapore's, because of what, we don't have anything to offer. Like nature, we don't have mountains. So like, but what we do have is a very vibrant event space.
Yeah.
Every weekend, there's always
There's
some
always
event.
something, yeah.
And that's like sort of like the thing to keep people interested. Oh,
Actually,
there's something happening.
I'm a
There's
big
something
proponent
happening.
of Singapore is not boring at all.
Yeah.
I've been here for 8 years. I think there's probably get bored at some point, but because I wanted, just because I didn't go to this or didn't call somebody, because
But-
it's quite easy to find.
Shankar, I want to throw something at you, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were to say that Singapore is not boring as a person living here 8 years versus someone who was born and raised here.
Yeah.
And if he says that Singapore is boring, like, do you think that there is some credence to that argument? Because, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah,
one.
I think there is some credence, and it's because of I came from another country.
Right.
I had to find my own friends.
Yep.
I have to discover the city, and at an age in which I don't know, I was ready to discover a city. It was not just given for me for granted.
Right.
So probably that's the difference. A lot of Singaporeans complain that it's a little bit boring because they just don't go out.
Yeah.
They just don't move. I don't know. I got invited with some friends to just random concerts in this
Oh shit!
condo
That's,
that one that
weird
you did-
concert. Oh yeah, yeah.
yes, that you had to like a couple of bands there, and you had to call and everything. So yeah, the things that happened like that.
So this is something that Patrick also mentioned in a previous podcast episode, where it's like if you grow in a particular, if you grow in a town or a country and all that, we're so used to hanging out with the people that we went to school with,
Yeah.
the university with, or the people that we work with. So we don't have the incentive to expand that social circle. But then when you're a foreigner and when you're a stranger in a strange land, exactly
You know
like you said.
nobody. I
Yeah,
mean,
so it's like you're desperate.
yeah.
Not
know?
really desperate, but when you are
Okay,
a
I'm speaking for
foreigner-
myself. I was very desperate.
You're a foreigner.
I was like, be my friend.
yeah, more or less. All the time in mode on. Like, okay, let's
Okay.
find something to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you have already lived here all your life, you already have your circle of friends and you are comfortable.
But you mentioned
So,
8
you never
years.
need,
You mentioned 8 years,
Yeah,
right? It's 8 years is a pretty long time.
It's been a long time. Still okay. I like it.
Yeah, but like eventually you get comfortable at some point. Do you find yourself like slowly becoming
Singaporean lah.
not necessary, not necessary. But like maybe, with what you said, like, you come in, you know nobody, and then you have to find friends.
Yeah.
But now the fact that you have friends, you don't go out and discover things.
I still go out. I think that I still want to do something different more often than a lot of people, but probably because of that, because I got the experience of having to do it before. So I got used to
okay.
already. Okay, this is something that you do. This is the regular weeks for me.
Right.
Just find something to do on the weekend
Right.
instead of being reactive
Right. Okay.
and wait.
Which is fair. A lot of people tend not to go out in general. I mean, the vast majority of people are comfortable staying within the confines of their home, their friendships, and that's what defines their experience in that country, right? So, I mean, this applies for foreigners also living in Singapore, where it's like I know people who live here, but their focus is their jobs and their families, and with good reason, because they're like, I don't give a fuck about some event that's happening. I don't give a fuck about an event that's happening over here. I care about, my kids, my career and shit like that, right? So if I were to ask that person, hey, is this city boring? They would say yes, right? So personal agency plays a part. But then you guys emphasize that friendship and human connection is also very important.
Speaking of that, do you want to know something like interesting about Singapore that's different from a lot of places?
What?
So, for example, like Japan, right? Being alone is not seen as something.
Yeah.
Like it's so common that it's becoming a problem in
Right.
some sense that
Okay.
some people they want to be kept alone in their home, in their family home, and then
hikikomori or something like that.
that's the term.
What is hikikomori?
People that just seclude themselves in their house because they don't want human contact, because they are afraid, or just don't want to.
Right. Is it a conscious
connect.
choice, or is it just
Conscious choice based on just like a process that repeats itself. If you start secluding yourself, then you probably
Right.
want
Okay.
to.
Like they
It
read
becomes a
manga
vicious
or
circle,
like they
right.
play video games all day, But I think Singapore has a reverse.
Okay.
Like
Wow.
I've had enough friends where they don't want to do things themselves. Like,
Oh,
like,
shit,
like,
I know
like,
one guy.
I know
He's a friend of
friends.
ours.
I tell them, oh yeah, I just go out and have lunch on my own.
Yeah,
And they're like, what the hell? That's like fucking weird, man. Like, I don't know what's wrong with eating lunch on your own. Like they need company. If not, they cannot do something.
Huh.
And like so many places and things and people that I met, they've able to do it elsewhere, but Singapore seems to be something that I find like on a consistent basis.
Interesting. So this is because I know one person and he's a friend of all of ours.
Oh,
Okay.
Suraj.
Ouch. Oh.
Hey man,
There she
how you
goes.
doing?
I say that because I was like that.
Yeah, me too.
And like I
think.
wouldn't go out to do something if I'm gonna do it alone. It's
Right.
just like what's the point? Like there's no excitement, there's no fun to it,
Okay.
But
okay.
like recently, like not too long ago, I started going concerts on my own.
Right.
It's like I still can enjoy the bands that I like on my own.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So in that case, let me
Like
just-
people always feel that you go to a concert, you must go with people that you enjoy with and people that you know. Of course, it makes it a bit easier and better experience because you're sharing that fun together.
that's a good point.
But like
Yeah.
going there alone, you're still, your main point is you're going there because the band or the artist you like is playing, right?
That's true. That's
You know?
true. Because generally, I feel to be fair, I understand that concert aspect and sharing an experience. I think that's a very valid reason. I guess my gripe with this particular friend of ours, whose name I will censor afterwards, is
Shall not be spoken.
Yeah. It's about like watching movies alone. I'm like, that's
What do you mean? He doesn't watch
I mean, that's
movies alone?
Netflix. Like,
he doesn't
why
want to
can't
watch
you?
go to a movie theater and watch a movie alone.
Okay.
And I find
Holy
that
shit, you're filled with people in the movie theater. You're not alone.
So I find that interesting. The concert example is actually pretty awesome, which is something that I never considered.
Yeah.
But I
But-
understand that. Yeah,
Okay,
I think I used to
okay.
be like that too. No,
Hey, high
recently only.
five.
Yeah, recently only. No, I do things by myself.
Okay.
Because you get to know yourself better. Also,
Right.
like, okay, I like that. Okay, nobody else. Then I still want to do it. Yeah.
And I think, Celine, there's also the fact that, as you grow older, you just stop giving a shit.
Yeah,
You're
maybe.
like, fuck you, friends. I don't need friends. Let's do my own
Or like, in the sense of traveling, like how often do you find Singaporeans that travel on their own? When they do, they're either amazed or horrified. There's no
What
middle
do you-
ground.
what do you mean?
Amazed
What
or
do you
horrified
mean?
about what?
Like,
Please
holy
elaborate.
shit, you're traveling alone, or like, it's either oh my god, you're traveling alone, or like holy shit, you're traveling alone.
Okay.
It's a different tonality that makes like.
But then I think it's okay. That's fair. But then why is that? Why is that sentiment there?
Like, I mean, okay, I can even stereotype Singaporeans into how we travel. There's like either Thailand, which is we
Shan is
go all
Singaporean, by
time.
the way, so he has like every right to shit on you guys.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, please,
Just saying.
please. Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, or actually that's about
Yeah.
rinse and repeat these countries.
Something
Okay.
safe.
They
Or-
always go the same fucking places.
Okay.
They go to Thailand, it's always Chatuchak Market or like then they stay in some fucking hotel. They go and eat at the same fucking places all the Singaporeans go to. And then they have some massage and then repeat. They don't do anything different when they travel also.
But then could it be like what the intent to travel also plays a part, right? So for some people, travel is about, learning new things, experiencing new stuff. For a lot of people, travel is about escaping from, the daily humdrum of their lives. So,
Yeah, but you don't need to do the same fucking thing every time you travel,
I
right?
know that there's comfort in routine.
So they're telling me, for example, that city can become boring if you are boring. Basically, if you always do the same things.
Yeah, exactly,
when you
definitely.
travel. So,
Yeah.
for example, you decide right now, Taiwan, Thailand, Hong Kong.
No,
if
but
you go
like-
there and
like-
just go to some places every time, and
you go
try
to
the
those
same food.
places, it's okay, but like try and have something like different in your itinerary. Like go somewhere else. Like don't just stick to the same places. There's so much more to discover on this planet, and like they
but
barely
Yeah.
touch.
But
But I agree. It depends on what's the goal of the trip. If you some people go travel just to relax after
have a holiday,
to have
yeah.
a real holiday.
Yeah.
I used to judge that before, but no, I can understand it.
Yeah.
It's also good to just and then you just go
Oh, you've
for what's
changed.
safe and what you know is
right.
good, and you don't want to necessarily take a risk of
now
discovering something new.
there is, for example, some cities that have absolutely nothing to do. That a lot of people would agree that, oh man,
See, that's the thing about like the podcast topic, which is boring cities.
Yeah.
Like, if you keep going to the same places, maybe for some people, eventually they get boring.
Yeah.
And there's so many places that they haven't discovered that could be so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Then, like, because they choose not to, they are missing out on that,
So I'm going to condense this by saying that, cities are not boring. It's just people that are. Is that?
I
Yeah,
like
humans
that.
are
Yeah,
fucking boring.
I really like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
maybe. I was thinking right now, for
you can
example.
make any place interesting if you want to.
Yeah. I was thinking
Probably.
right now, for example, in some cities that are just based on one specific thing, like, for example, diving.
Okay.
And okay, that's the thing that you're going to do. Maybe diving and getting a tan.
Yeah, but the interestingness of a city or town doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a bunch of things going on all the time. To take
Yeah.
the example of a city just about diving, I mean, the people who go to this purpose-built or this purpose-driven town
Yep.
are people who love diving. So
Yeah.
like everybody's going to give a glowing, positive experience about this.
I
They're
mean,
like, "Oh my
you
gosh,
don't even have to make it like only just planet Earth. You can have someone, you can fly them to moon, and then they'll be like, "Oh man, the moon's fucking boring. It's just all rocks, man."
And it's quite
And like, if they're not Neil Armstrong, they'll be like, "Really?
It's
I
fucking
fly
dusty.
all that way.
Nobody's
just to
cleaning up here or what?
see a bunch of holes."
Man.
I don't see a Pizza Hut nearby. What the fuck?" Okay, that's fair.
There's no
That's fair.
Wi-Fi here, man. Because for you, a lot of it is the human element.
And I would say the same thing about me because I think I thrive on having people around me, and I think my enjoyment is very much dependent on. It's just how
Especially
it
if
is.
you live in a place, because you like
You're
you
biased
said
as well.
at first the other elements like the landscape or the environment is nice. When you travel, it's okay if it's just that. You don't actually get to know so much the local people.
Yeah, at the same time,
You don't get
travel
the
is
time.
not a good indicator for understanding a
And,
city.
Yeah,
I was
you
telling
just-
Rindo the other day that we are quite biased.
Yeah, I mean, we are all biased.
How do you make a city less boring for you personally?
So I'll come back to my experience with Luxembourg.
Go. Clearly,
so I
Celine
went.
loves Luxembourg.
Yeah, I went to the Couchsurfing meeting there.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Well, there was almost no meeting, first of all.
Okay.
So I went to the page mostly, and then I was waiting for like meetups to arrive, and once every 3-4 months there was one event,
Right.
and then it always happened when I was not in town.
Okay.
So at one point I got annoyed, and I decided, okay, I'll create my own event.
There
And
we go.
That's when the pub crawl started.
Very good job.
Wow.
That's a very,
Yeah.
very nice job.
Yeah, we got
Alcohol brings everyone together.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can actually make a city less boring if you start like gathering people, and some people are just waiting for things to happen, and then
Yeah.
it never happens. And if you find it so boring that you just make it happen yourself. Yeah.
initiative.
We-
That's
we-
great.
Yeah, that's the
We-
thing, right? Like with anywhere in the world, you need to, or you or someone need to be the one that people are like lost sheeps all around, and like you're like the one bringing everyone. Oh, this is the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
But the bigger the city is, the greater the chances of somebody taking that initiative, which is
Initiative,
why
yeah.
all these events happen, right?
Yeah, but sometimes we are lazy and we are waiting for someone else to do it.
For sure, for sure.
And
Or we're
also
waiting for somebody else to invite you in a weekend.
and also depends on the entrepreneurial mindset of the people as well.
Wow.
I will say-
Okay.
I would
But-
say in Luxembourg also, I feel like people are more into stability.
People are like sheeple.
They
You mean?
don't. They are like bankers and lawyers. They don't.
Oh, wow.
They wouldn't want. They're maybe not like people who would like to take initiative and do something.
I guess
Is that what you mean by entrepreneurial spirit? Taking initiative is okay.
I guess if the pub crawl would be a business, they would have started it,
Yeah.
right?
You be the CEO.
And then it will have become like super expensive. No one will have come
Exactly.
and boring.
Okay.
Again.
Okay.
You'll be doing TED Talks about park crawls in Singapore.
And their associated app. Pub
Okay.
crawl.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah.
Is it just personal initiative though? We were talking about nature and stuff like that. Does that affect how a city is boring? So what? Let's take the example of Singapore, right, which is mostly urban. There are very little opportunities to, check out nature, at least within the island. But then there are opportunities to go outside, right? So would that be a problem?
Okay, like coming from a photographer's standpoint, things to photograph, let's say you want to capture something that looks nothing like Singapore, you'll be hard pressed to find a place or a way you can exert that imagination out.
I mean,
Like how imaginative can you be with like locations around?
as a photographer, are you looking for something specific, or is it just novelty?
I think most of us are looking for something specific. Let's say you have an idea that you wanna execute. Like for example, I take Gardens by the Bay.
Okay.
It's too well manicured. Then I went to Kew Gardens in London, and it's exactly what I was looking for. So I wanted like a glass house with like plants, and they're not exactly growing in like the most perfect conditions. Like maybe they're a bit overgrown, but that's fine. Like it adds to it makes it looks like more natural. But Singapore is so well manicured. It's like, yeah, I can't really use that space to like execute a certain vision that I want.
Do you think that if something is too orderly, it makes it boring?
Yeah, in that sense, yeah.
Mm,
All right.
Maybe yes.
Maybe like places like Pyongyang would be boring to some people.
Never been, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no information.
North Korea.
Mm.
Maybe yes. You need to let yourself go a little bit. Yeah.
Like okay, we can take for example graffiti.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
for a
Oh,
lot
man.
of cities, graffiti is seen as like a menace.
It is.
People expressing their feelings.
At the same time, it's also a piece of art.
Yep.
But like for Singapore, because it's so much of an issue, only specific places they allow graffiti to be like spray painted.
Right.
That it's only an art form.
Okay.
That's where it's
only
so
they
specific.
accepted things that
And
you
where
can
that's where
say.
people go and take pictures. It's like, imagine if like people see graffiti, they're like, why do you bother, in like
Yeah.
London or say Berlin's full of graffiti, but
Yeah.
people go and photograph there as well.
Right.
I'm not sure if you've been to Copenhagen, but what I find like maybe to many people they might find okay, it's just another Danish city. Like the most interesting part that I enjoyed was there's this place called the Freetown of Christiania.
Okay.
It's like such a different world from the rest of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it started out as, I think it was like a protest area against the government or something. Then people started living there. It's a old military base, I think, and they squat there. And then suddenly, I think it started developing, and there was like bars. There's like concert places. There's like people who do art there. And then also the mafia came in
Okay.
to sell drugs.
Oh wow.
And I think that was an issue
That added
for
the interestingness quotient.
that was a issue for the government.
Okay.
But it's kind of a gray area.
Right.
They sort of allow them to operate, but at the same time they do raids on the mafia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a very different world from the rest of the city.
Okay, what do you think, for example, about Geylang? We are right now in Geylang. And it's kind of regulated, or the government kind of allows it in a way that is a little bit different than other parts of Singapore. It's kind of like contained in here.
Yeah.
And well, it's something that I think the government thinks if we keep it there, it's not going to expand somewhere else.
Which is like what Christiania does in Copenhagen as well. Like they have like, okay, we sort of let you like sell drugs, but like only like say weed are only sold there.
Okay.
And the people that sell there, they have this little booths, and they're like sort of very discreet. It's like a pawn shop.
Okay.
There's like only the hands exchange like the goods and the money.
Right.
And like you don't see what the person looks like. They are wearing ski masks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
They wear ski masks.
Yeah, they wear ski masks. Yeah, when I was
Totally
there.
not shady.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks incredibly shady.
So I guess it's like a give or take. At some point,
looks even more dangerous than the guy that you see the face. But okay.
yeah. But I found it like so much, like adds to the, like it makes it more interesting
Okay.
than what actually the city is.
So are you saying that if there is a gray area in every city?
Maybe so people might find like Geylang to be the best part of town.
Oh, it is.
I
It
think
is.
that there is if there is a concentration enough of people in any place, there's going to be places like this.
Yeah.
People is going to find recreation in a different way.
Well, in places where there's a little less rules and like, it's more laxist, then people have like more freedom to do whatever, be creative. Also,
Yeah,
like they
yeah.
can.
To be who they are.
Yeah. So if it's an environment where there's so many rules that they tell you exactly how to live and you have to fit in that, then you won't give yourself space for initiative or anything
Right.
else. So then the place becomes boring, I
Okay.
guess.
Let's go. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Coming back about Singapore, it becomes like your father's house, in which you cannot do whatever you want.
That's an interesting.
My house, my
evaluation.
rules.
Okay.
That's what your
okay.
parents do, right? What your parents say. My house, my rules. So yeah, well, that's it.
Like Singapore would be boring to me because not because of like stuff like things to do and places to see or food to eat, but more of like the creativity part.
Yeah. My friend is playing guitar, and he told me that he needs to pay to actually go into festivals.
Yeah,
Some
I'm
of the
not
festivals,
surprised with that.
Yeah, you need to pay. You're not invited. There is
Yeah.
not like some things like that.
But
You need to be able to play in some festivals, something like that. You need to pay. At least for some
So,
of them, you don't get.
I have a question here, right? Being an artist is hard generally everywhere, right?
Yeah, no surprise.
When we hear about artists making it in other countries, we generally hear about the artists who made it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Survivor bias. You mean?
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like we forget the millions of other people who
who didn't make it. Yeah.
Yes, they're like slumming it out just to figure things out, right? So, and I hear these conversations about how being an artist is hard in Singapore because of a lot of things and all that. Is that any different from, let's say, being an artist in, let's say, Sydney, not counting the ones who made it?
So comparing the quantity of government that of money that the Singapore has per capita compared to other countries, and that they could use for this, yeah, I think it's quite unfair.
No, I think for a lot of the other cities and countries, it's a lot more open, and there's a lot more people who are willing to either experiment or like listen to something different. For example, music, or to look at something more controversial. They are able to accept it.
Right.
But for Singapore, and it stands on
Stability.
yeah,
and
there's
be safe. and safeness.
controversy is a touchy subject. You just
I think that being safe even expands to your own taste in the end.
yeah,
Like
as
people
well.
just like no, I only listen to this because it's safe. Is the thing that I've been always listening to. Yeah, okay.
You know, what you see is what you get. It's like, I know I enjoy it, so I'm going to like it. So that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Yeah, I
right.
don't need to go
Okay.
out of my way to just like something else.
Like, you know, underground clubs exist in other countries.
Okay.
They just don't in Singapore. Yeah, I mean, maybe they do, but it's like so difficult and so rare.
Yeah, and they
You
don't
know.
last for long.
Yeah, that's the other point. Yeah.
That's it.
Which is fair. Which is fair. I mean, so what I'm getting here is that, you know, if there's too much order, it's a problem. If there is a society that values stability at the expense of everything else, that place is most likely
That's
to be
what makes
boring.
things boring for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Maybe
Yeah,
the extremes. Yeah,
Okay,
sometimes. I know that, for example, Singapore always makes some examples of what they don't want to become, like other countries in Asia. That's their point, to make it very, very, very strict, so that they don't become something like Philippines being having drugs around and things not working sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that they want to make a lot of order. But yeah,
but Shankar, can I
there's
ask?
different ways to make order anyway.
But Shankar, can I say that, you know, you can aspire to a society that works and at the same time, you
Yeah.
know, have the ability to explore other things.
Yeah, actually, don't think that the Singapore way it works up to some extent, but it doesn't educate; it punishes.
Huh. That's interesting. Well,
That's the type of punishment is not education. People will go out of Singapore and will do whatever they want. Why? No, I don't know. I remember one guy that told me, "No, if I go to Malaysia, I just throw the pack of cigarettes to the street. I don't care. I don't get fined $500."
yeah, but then how does that add to making a space more creative and interesting? I guess that's my question.
More creative.
I think because they are too stifled, then they feel like they want to exert that.
Well,
That it's like, you know, you okay, for example, you've been told, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Then you go to a place where either nobody gives a shit or you can. Then you're like, oh my god, it's like heaven for you, you know?
so like you just throw shit just because you
You're
can.
like, yeah, you just
Just because you can, yeah, it's kind of
all the way out, you know.
it's kind of yeah. Oh well, we do this here.
Yeah, but then I'm struggling to understand like why that would be a factor in whether a place is interesting or not. Because, you know, you can aspire to have a society that is harmonious, that, you know, at the
Okay, I
end of
think
the
that-
day,
yeah,
you know,
we
throwing trash is all about being considerate to your fellow citizen, right?
we are focusing on the Singapore example.
But how is that stifling? That's what
yeah,
I guess trying to
I think that, for example, being a little bit too strict constrains people to just think the same, behave the same, and not explore other things. When you don't explore other things, you don't have so many differentiation.
Well, I think living in Pyongyang in North Korea would be pretty fucking boring.
For example, North Korea is a very, 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 very extreme example of government stopping the people to be themselves.
Okay.
I hope Kim Jong Un's not listening on this.
I hope
he's my number one podcast
That would
fan.
be awesome. That would be interesting.
No offense to North Korea.
Celine, you wanted to say something?
No, just if we come back to events, for example, organizing an event in Singapore, like you cannot, you're not supposed to. There are some rules, like you cannot make people come to the same place. You have to ask a license. You have
Right.
to do this and that.
Yeah.
So that kind of restricts a bit the initiative of people.
Right.
Also, like
It becomes a deterrent because then you're like, fuck this. I might as well not do it. Okay, so we've all heard that Singapore is considered boring by a lot of people, right? If you were the prime minister of Singapore, you won the election this year or next year, maybe. What would you do to change that?
Second one, the difficult one, really.
Tomorrow, you become the prime minister, Prime Minister
man.
Shan Bang.
Oh, I have
What do you
to
do?
start first, huh? Because I'm the only Singaporean here. Okay, fine. Well, okay, like running Singapore as a city and country is pretty fucking hard. So I have to give like the ruling party that for credit. But I think like making it more liberal for the art scene, because we as Singaporeans are not like really, because people like to think that Singapore is boring because they can't come up with stuff. But it's not that we can't, it's we can, but the thing is because of all the regulations that there is,
As Celine
it's
was saying,
just
yeah. Okay.
so goddamn hard.
Right. Okay.
So like, we're not stupid. We're beyond that touchy shit subject. Like let people infer what's touchy and what's not for themselves.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sure people are more than capable to tell like something that is for the purpose of art or sarcasm over something that is just plainly insulting, right?
but as a prime minister, what can you do to control that sentiment? Like if controversy happens, it's not like you can just step up and say, "Hey, no more controversies."
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna let people make up the mind for themselves.
Okay.
If people start rioting, then I'll just come in and say, yeah, fucking stop that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have what would be the 3 action items that you would pass in Parliament to allow for making Singapore more interesting?
It's only 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, number 1, I'll make it like the restrictions for art scene a lot more open.
What kind of restrictions would you lift?
If people want to insult my government, go ahead. Like, you see, that's the thing. Like, even when it comes to something like criticism, there's still a lot of barriers for
Okay.
us to criticize our own government. So like even if it's like we can't just go out and protest. So like I would like people to be able to, I mean, if they want to, they can apply for permits to protest.
Right.
But they don't have to just do it within Hong Lim Park, which
Okay.
is
Okay.
I feel personally such a way that they are only strategically placed within that small space and they're not allowed to go around certain areas that I think would affect the public opinion or policy of the government or the country.
So I have a question for you, Prime Minister Shan Bang.
Yeah,
do you
please
think
do.
that opening up different spaces for protest would add to the creativity?
See, it's not just protests. It's like opening up for gatherings because
Okay.
gatherings can be like, if at the same time, like if I want to say have a gathering, it doesn't even have to be something political. It doesn't have to be a protest. Let's say I want to do a climate change march. I can't even do that because it's
You need
something.
permits and
Yeah, I need a permit for that. And marches just don't happen. The police gonna come down hard on me because it's a march.
Okay.
It's not, maybe, it doesn't have to be specifically targeting the government of the country, but it could be a very wide varying issue.
Okay.
But at the same time, I have to consider that because of our strategic position as a trading partner for the globe,
Yeah.
we can't go into like a lot of touchy subjects.
Right.
Like we like for a lot of cases we don't consider ourselves to be on like the American side or the China side or anybody's side. We are our own country.
Okay.
Because if we start picking sides, it's kind of making it like bias for us.
Which is true.
Yeah.
So that would be your grand plan.
Yeah,
Right.
basically.
Okay. What would you do, Shankar, if you were prime minister tomorrow? What is the one thing that you would do?
I think that Singapore needs to be less interventionist on things of social matters. Right now, it's just closing anything that whenever there's some social unrest, you just close it without talking. Like, yeah,
But
this is
then-
it. This is it. Let's not talk about it anymore.
But Prime Minister Shankar, I voted you because I wanted you to make the city more creative.
Yeah.
And
That's
know.
going to make the city more creative because there's going to be more conversation between us.
Okay.
I mean, don't close it before problems arrive or something like that. It's just being incredibly scared.
Okay.
Right now. Just being scared.
I feel like, okay, sorry to interrupt, but I feel like when something's controversial, because the government's so afraid that something's gonna explode, they just like, before they reach their boiling point, they cut it off.
Yeah, but maybe.
But like, I think people are like civilized enough to not go out and start throwing stones and Molotov cocktails.
There is quite a lot of leeway that you could give to the people.
You can have a forum. Like, you want to have something to agree to disagree.
Maybe people can start talking instead of just keeping it inside.
Yeah.
So that could be one of the things. Why could make it less boring? Well, because there could be more points of view going on. Or maybe people could be able to do some extra things instead of just asking for a permission for everything.
Okay. Celine, if you were Prime Minister tomorrow.
I agree with everything said here.
Okay.
On the top of that, I would say I'll add some more paid leaves.
Paid leaves.
Yeah, so we can also like take a break more often, and that's also what brings some creativity sometimes when you're like out of the routine and work, and then maybe you go out of Singapore and see a bit how it is outside and get more time.
Okay.
For that.
Okay. Wow.
And because in Singapore, we are like people are still struggling for a living. Like it's so expensive. You have to take a job. You have to work your ass for it. So you don't have that extra space or time to actually think about this. And the creativity will come if you have that space and time, right? And maybe people don't because they are too busy with struggling and living.
Yeah.
So if the government will do something about that.
But Celine, you are the government, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, like more paid leaves and more like social benefits, maybe.
Right.
So right now, for example, that's a good point. But not only time, but money. Money is a big concern in Singapore. And I think that is kind of being all the fun activities are being just paid for. So
see, that's the thing. Like, there are a lot of cities in the world where money is also a concern, but at the same time, they have more to offer than what we have.
For example, there is these days there is the law of not buying alcohol after 10:30 in a supermarket.
Yeah.
But you can always buy it if you are in a club. So if you can afford those prices, yes, you're allowed to have party. If you cannot afford those prices, well, you're going to be bored. If you cannot afford to go into a concert, you're going to be bored. If you can only go to a park, well, that's your thing.
So if you were Prime Minister and if you had the ability to cut the cost of something, what would you cut the cost of? And this is a question for all of you guys. I guess. You know, you go to Parliament and like, hey guys, I'm going to slash the cost.
I think that we need like more open space things happening that you don't need to pay for it.
Okay,
it happens for everyone. They're like, yeah, I know you can do. There's other countries that you can. There's like some concerts for everyone, and it's like open thing.
About that point, I totally agree with that. Like, the licensing and to set up like event spaces is just so goddamn expensive.
It's making 2 tiers of people.
If you can make it like so much simpler and so much more affordable to make it like, you know, that even someone like me, I could spend maybe let's say a few $1,000s to have my little concert or idea of a gathering that I want to have. Then it's like every single town can have something every weekend, not just the central area.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know.
Something
the town
different,
organized
something more special.
Organize something for the young people. Maybe every single Jisun, you said before,
Like maybe you don't
whatever.
like it, that's okay. But there's like maybe 5 different things you could
But you
potentially
have
like.
the option
Yeah,
to join it,
yeah,
and
definitely.
it's in your neighborhood. So maybe you join and you stay with the
Like
people
if
in the
it's so
neighborhood.
much more things for me to do within my own neighborhood, if I like, let's say maybe 3 different concerts, maybe one's not my thing, then there's 2 other that I could consider, or
Yeah.
like there's another event that's like not just selling rainbow cakes.
Yeah, a lot of the events are based on you just spending money. So it's a business thing instead of the government.
Yeah,
giving.
like
But
free
isn't that the
concerts are
case
just not
with
really
all
a thing.
big cities? I mean, to
That's
take
not
the
the case with
example of
big
New
cities.
York, for example, it's
Yeah.
crazy expensive to live there.
Mhm.
Everybody's facing the same issues that people in Singapore do.
True.
Rent is unaffordable. Just living life is hard because money
Yeah.
dominates everything. But people always say that New York is still interesting because of two things. Number one, there is that historical connotation of Singapore. New York is amazing because 300,000 American
Okay.
movies told us so.
True.
Right. And the other fact is so there's this one thing, right? Where when you have a city that has the countryside, right? The countryside will always have people who are attracted to the city. So let's say there are 3 artists from bumfuck nowhere in America. They
Mhm.
come to New York and they bring their creativity to it, but then they get burned out and they're like, fuck this place. It's soulless, it's boring, and I'm getting out. But as these 3 go out, there's 3 others
Right.
from another town who come down here. So there's like a constant movement of people coming in and bringing something new.
Yeah.
Right.
Influx of
Whereas in a
people.
place like Singapore, which doesn't have that, there isn't that movement. There isn't those, new ideas or
Yeah, I
new
don't think that
things
people
coming in.
comes here for the arts.
Speaking of which,
Which is
like,
fair.
People comes here is for the money and for
Okay.
finance and for money.
Okay.
have you heard of like any Luxembourg bands or artists?
No,
Oh, you see,
no.
you see, that's
To
an
me,
that's
to
an
me, the
example.
art scene there is for me.
What
I
have you
don't
seen?
remember having
What have you seen in Luxembourg?
nothing.
Okay, ouch.
Hmm.
Wow. Okay.
But-
If you were to advise Luxembourgians, to to make it more creative or to make it less boring, what would you suggest? What would you tell your Luxembourgian friends?
My friend, and I don't have Luxembourgish friends since
I was just saying in general.
since I don't know what's the problem with Luxembourgish people, since I don't know them, it's hard
Right.
for me to say.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't have enough knowledge about them. I think.
I guess, if I were prime minister,
Huh?
I know exactly what I'm going to do.
What could you do?
I'm going to ban all banks.
Ban all bands.
Yeah. No banks.
Ban all what?
Bankers suck.
Banks.
Oh, banks.
No,
Ban all
no
banks.
banks in Singapore. Yeah.
Okay.
How am I gonna pay now, people? Huh?
You don't need bankers. You don't need this many bankers, right? 'Cause-
Where I'm gonna store my money under the pillow?
yeah, I don't care because I'm just prime minister for 5 years. What happens after that? I don't give a fuck.
5 years. 4 years, right?
Oh, 4 or 5 years, right? Yeah, it can be
4, I
anything
think.
between 4 to 5. Yeah.
Right.
Anything.
Well, we started with boring cities, then we ended with Singapore. Specifically,
No, I
I
mean,
suppose
It
that's
was part of the process,
It's a normal thing of.
I mean,
living in Singapore anyway.
like we are in Singapore, so it's not exactly a fair way to talk about. this
I don't
subject.
find Singapore boring at all.
Actually,
Really?
Actually, don't find Singapore
please
boring.
do tell. Please do tell.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's an interesting
but that's
topic.
because I
There are
come
quite a lot
from
of things.
Luxembourg. So for me,
That's
it's
a
like,
trek.
it's
I feel like
like
I gotta
huge.
visit Luxembourg, just to see if she's just.
I mean, how can you find Singapore boring when Sunday you get invited to make a podcast?
Yeah,
Boom.
exactly.
Boom.
Yeah, there's a great.
You're welcome, guys.
It's all about people, right?
You know, that's a challenge for Luxembourg's tourism office. If they have to prove to people like you that Luxembourg's not boring, then they can fund their campaign in some way. They can make Luxembourg not boring. Because that's what they did with I'm not sure if you came across this Facebook ad about Australia. They're like saying, 90% of Singaporeans find X place in Australia
I've
boring.
heard of it. But yeah. Okay.
So that's a way.
New Zealand. I have heard about New Zealand specifically.
What about New Zealand?
Like it's boring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I know. Some people told me about New Zealand.
Yep. Shanbag, you
there's
just
not
came back
much
from New
things there.
Zealand.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
If you're into a scenario, yeah. You have
Yeah,
to-
so it's kind of biased because like if you're into scenery and nature.
I've heard about New Zealand, about people that is living there a little bit more.
I mean,
So
it is
just,
definitely slow.
not just visiting. Not
It
just
is
visiting.
definitely slow. Like their selling point for a lot of places is that places open 7 days a week, which I think.
Wow, that's the USP. They're like, hey guys,
That's-
we're open
No,
24/7.
yeah, they're proud about that. But I think that's
It's
a
like
good
half
factor.
Asia.
It's actually a
It's
good
24
factor
hours.
because there's so many
This thing.
places elsewhere in the world where places just don't open.
Oh yeah.
So-
Luxembourg.
Oh, ouch.
It's like
At
she
6
has a
PM.
vendetta against Luxembourg.
How many strike marks have we
What
got on
happened to
Luxembourg?
you?
No,
Did somebody dump you in Luxembourg?
Almost everywhere in Europe, actually, it's like that.
If you're listening to this
It stops at
podcast,
6
you
p.m.
know that Luxembourg's a fucking boring city.
Okay. Actually, now I want to go there and check.
You see what we've done?
Okay, go and
Do
see
you
for
secretly work
yourself.
for their tourism office?
No, but that's all good. Guys, thank you so much for being part of this
No problem.
conversation.
Thanks to you.
Prime Minister Shanbang, Prime Minister Shankar,
Yep.
Prime Minister Celine.
Supreme
Yeah.
Leader Champagne.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No, we're not North Korea yet. So.
Okay. Not yet, not yet.
And that's it for this time. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Do let me know what you think about it. What do you think is a boring city, and why is it boring? What's your take on the places we talked about in this episode? Comment on social media, send an email, drop by and get along for a beer. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Until the next time, this is Rindo, and you're listening to Living It Up in Lion City. Bye bye.